Wow, you look tantalizing. You know, I make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered.
3 years, that's when I discovered Instacart, and I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well, and it's so that's been an issue, I think, for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows.
The episode began like any other installment of The View. Warm studio lights bathed the set. The hosts leaned in with practiced smiles. The familiar hum of daytime chatter filled the room, creating that comforting rhythm viewers had come to expect. Nothing in the opening moments hinted at disruption, yet this episode was about to stray far from the usual predictable flow. What began as another round of lighthearted, feel-good discussion gradually spiraled into one of the most awkward exchanges daytime television has seen in years. The kind that makes audiences pause and rewind just to make sure they heard correctly. At the center of it stood Sunny Host. She entered the studio with the assuredness of someone ready to guide the conversation, only to leave as the target of a pointed takedown, not from one, but two unlikely critics, Bill Maher and Greg Gutfeld.
To wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say in The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. So, but the problem with her is that
if I had any doubt that I was right about the change that's happened in the left, watching people protest for a terrorist organization, that straightened me up pretty quick.
You can see the way Sunny Hostin, the way she's touching her above her eye, she can't even look at him. She's an activist, not a journalist or whatever.
The tension started subtly, then quickly sharpened. Sunny shifted the discussion to the word woke, arguing that conservatives had unfairly co-opted it as a slur. She reminded her fellow host that the term had roots in Black activism, originally intended to encourage vigilance against injustice, and insisted she couldn't see why anyone would consider that problematic. On paper, her argument seemed solid, moral, even righteous. But Bill Maher wasn't convinced.
The term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words migrate.
Why is that a bad thing?
Maher acknowledged the term's origins without hesitation, but then he did something far more striking. He highlighted what it had become. Woke, he explained, no longer signified awareness. It had transformed into something rigid, punitive, and openly ridiculed, even by those who had once embraced it. Then came the line that landed quietly but sharply, like a gut punch. Maher recalled a time when anti-Semitism was largely associated with conservatives, then corrected himself, noting its troubling presence among progressives too. He didn't shout it or dramatize it. He delivered it as a simple observation, the kind that hits hardest because it comes from someone who has witnessed the shift unfold firsthand.
But words migrate.
Why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice, who's not for that? But words, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay.
That subtle delivery is what made it sting. From that moment, Sunny's composure began to falter. Her voice wavered, and rather than directly addressing Maher's point, she circled back to her original argument, repeating it as if volume alone could serve as a rebuttal. That's when Greg Gutfeld leaned in, a grin spreading across his face. He dismissed The View as less a serious political forum and more a daytime spectacle, a carnival of recycled opinions and moral posturing. Comparing it to a hospital for failed ideas, his jab was sharp enough to elicit laughter, along with uncomfortable shifts in the audience's seats. Sunny froze. It was a controlled takedown.
From that moment, Sunny's grip started slipping. Her voice wavered. Instead of responding to Maher's argument, she repeated her original point, as if volume and repetition could substitute for rebuttal. That's when Greg Gutfeld jumped in. Leaning back with a grin, he dismissed The View as less of a serious political forum and more of a daytime sideshow, a carnival of recycled opinions and moral posturing. He compared it to a hospital for failed ideas, a jab sharp enough to draw laughter and uncomfortable shifting in seats. Sunny froze.
Maher applied pressure with calm, methodical precision, while Gutfeld wielded sarcasm like a crowbar, probing every weak point in her delivery. Different approaches, same effect. Sunny leaned back, rubbing her forehead, avoiding eye contact. She hadn't anticipated this level of pushback, especially not from two men who rarely agreed, and the heaviest blows were still ahead. Attempting to regain control.
Fun of the view a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly, it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that
Control, she framed the debate as a moral issue. Woke isn't the problem, she insisted. Conservatives are twisting the meaning. Maher's reply was devastating in its simplicity. Don't tell me the left hasn't changed. The silence that followed hit harder than any insult. Sunny blinked, speechless. The contrast between her emotional appeals and his measured observation exposed the fragility in her argument. Then Gutfeld struck. He accused her of lacking originality, claiming she borrowed her talking points from her husband.
It's become like a medical hospital that displays human misfailure. Like it's like here, let's look at this political oddity. You know, it's like it really is like the left-wing equivalent of a carnival sideshow, except instead of bearded ladies and fat clowns and two-headed cows. So let me rephrase that. But the View is a victim of the...
And went further, openly questioning her intelligence. Normally, such a comment would spark outrage. Instead, she remained silent. As the dust settled, her past resurfaced. Clips from Finding Your Roots reappeared, showing her discovery that her ancestry included European slave owners, an uncomfortable fact considering her outspoken support for reparations and her frequent portrayal of herself as a voice for the oppressed. The contradiction was stark. Critics pounced, not as a simple gotcha, but as another illustration of rhetoric divorced from reality. Then came the moments that made the disconnect impossible to ignore. While Maher and Gutfeld engaged with ideas, Sunny drifted into slogan.
Truth, and when for years you've been telling lie after lie after lie, now you're carrying this big bag of rocks around you because it's too harmful for their ego to admit that we really were dishonest. And they could be honest. All they would have to say is, look, we hate Trump so much. We were willing to lie about Joe Biden because we felt he was preferable. We thought our lying and our cover-up was on your behalf. Just say that. You're still scum.
And lifestyle anecdotes. She mentioned Instacart brunch prices, oat milk, and casually dropped terms like systemic oppression, but none of it was tied to a coherent argument. Her delivery had the energy of a motivational speech and the substance of a social media rant. Maher observed her like a professor watching a student who hadn't done the reading. Gutfeld didn't need words. His raised eyebrow said it all. Then came her most perplexing claim that having calm, nuanced discussions is itself a form of privilege. In her view, anyone able to talk through complex issues without anger was too privileged to understand real struggle. Maher didn't debate. He simply anchored the room with one line: reality doesn't require privilege to be understood. Sunny wasn't finished.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took the news. Roll it.
I found out was that my mother's family, while they are Puerto Rican, they actually originate from Spain. And the reason that they moved to Puerto Rico is because the slave trade had been sort of canceled in Spain and then Curacao, and then they moved all of their slaves to Puerto Rico. And so the family business, I had been told that they were printers and journalists, but they were in fact.
She pivoted again, this time targeting Republican women. She claimed that white women, particularly married ones, vote solely to preserve patriarchy for the benefit of their husbands and children. It wasn't analysis, it was a sweeping generalization, reducing millions to caricatures. The reaction wasn't applause, it was disbelief. Gutfeld tilted his head as if witnessing a slow-motion crash. Even Sunny's co-host looked uneasy. By now, the contrast was undeniable. On paper, Sunny host's resume was formidable. Lawyer, journalist, seasoned TV personality, but in practice, she leaned on buzzwords and moral signaling instead of evidence and reasoned argument. Maher methodically dismantled her logic, Gutfeld exposed the hollowness of her delivery, and Sunny seemed oblivious to it all. She carried herself as if she were winning, arms crossed, chin high, voice steady with conviction, but the applause never came. Even when Gutfeld highlighted her hefty salary as a counterpoint to her claims of speaking for the unheard, she didn't waver. She pressed on, not to debate.
The View's co-host, Sunny Hostin, says, "Hold my beer," and is literally claiming Republican women can't think for themselves.
I think that women, white women in particular, want to protect this patriarchy here because it's to their benefit.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well. And they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women.
But to perform, she wasn't seeking solutions, she was seeking validation. Maher delivered the final blow, not with anger, but with a simple, piercing question. How can you claim to be open-minded while canceling anyone who thinks differently? Sunny had nothing to offer. No answer, no rebuttal, no witty remark. Silence filled the space. Gutfeld leaned back, satisfied. Maher didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The unraveling was complete. Sunny continued to smile for the cameras, projecting confidence, but by that point, the truth was undeniable. The performance had collapsed. The emperor had no clothes. She entered the show ready to lecture. She left as the lesson. Bill Maher and Greg Gutfeld hadn't just highlighted her contradictions, they revealed a larger issue, a platform that confuses volume with truth and certainty with substance. And Sunny Host learned that lesson not quietly, but in front of millions.